to this day, I haven't stopped working on her, and dog ownership is a journey. It's not a destination. Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Pawdoption Guide podcast. I'm your host, Bethany Muir, and your Pawdoption Guide, and this is your one-stop shop for dog adoption advice. I'll share with you all you need to know about locating, adopting, and integrating, as well as training your rescue dog right here on this podcast. So let's get right into it. Today, I'm going to share about my 3 rescue pets, how I came to find them, a bit about the adoption process, and some of the main challenges we faced and conquered when we were integrating each one of them into our home. This is by no means going to be a comprehensive walk down memory lane, but further along in the podcast and as topics come up, I will share a bit about some of those struggles more at length when that's applicable. But for now, let's just get you up to speed on what my household looks like. So I live in Kitchener with my husband, TJ, and my 2 kids, Naomi and Dawson. And they're quite young. I'm actually on maternity leave still with Naomi, who just turned a year. And we have 3 pets. So I have a cat named Hudson. He's about 10 going on 11. And Geller, who is, sorry, I'm terrible with ages. Geller, he is 9, and Rory, who's 7. So a full household of 2 dogs and a cat and 2 kids, but we don't mind it at all. So that's our household in a nutshell. And now I will get right into Hudson's adoption story. So I was up at tech school, which is just a few hours past North Bay. And it was 2011. I had lost my cat in a tragic collar strangling incident outdoors a year prior when I had started school. So I wasn't really looking for a cat because I was still in school, but they find you. We had started surgery rotation in our classes, and I was head tech, and we were assigned a cat to neuter, and it was Hudson. We had heard a lot of horror stories about other cats that were just terrible for the neuter, so they were quite aggressive or really difficult for handling. So that meant that it was quite a complex scenario for a new tech to navigate. And we were really hopeful that we would get a really cooperative cat, and we did. So Hudson was... he's just sitting right here bumping the mic at the moment. He was easy to grow an appreciation for because he was very laid back and allowed us to place a catheter after we had grabbed blood from him and gave him sedation without any issue. And it was a smooth anesthetic. So we were pretty thrilled about our experience with him. And from that time, as well as lots of time spent in the cat ward or the cat room, hanging out with cats in between classes. We really got to know some of the animals from the colony that we worked with. So a lot of tech schools have a colony of animals, and ours was provided by North Bay Humane Society. So it wasn't uncommon for some tech students to adopt pets while they were away at school. And Hudson quickly became of interest to me. And pretty much right after that surgery for his neuter, I put in an application for him. Of course, I consulted my boyfriend at the time, TJ, to make sure he would be good with having a cat because it was only going to be a year out before I was living with him back at home. So he did end up coming up the following weekend and meeting Hudson and approved the whole scenario. But I put in my paperwork and it's technically for North Bay Humane Society, but at the school they would deal with those adoptions individually. And I was so nervous that someone was going to beat me to him because a lot of the students would spend time with the animals. And I just thought, well, they've got it figured out. He's so sweet and he's easygoing and cuddly. And but luckily enough, no one beat me to him with the application. And I heard back in about 3 days or so that I would get him. But the downside, like, he's literally on my shoulders right now. What a silly cat. The downside to that adoption was that he was going to have to remain in the colony. Like, they can't just adopt out all these animals and then have no one for us to practice on. So I did have to watch him be practiced on for the remainder of my schooling there, and that was pretty hard. I could take him home on weekends, but otherwise he lived at the school during the week. And yeah, it was not ideal to see other people, like, poking and prodding him, but that's just the way it goes when you adopt them in that scenario. So I was really lucky to get Hudson at that time. So one of the struggles we dealt with Hudson was that he would keep me up late at night when I was supposed to be resting after a long night of studying. He would be ready to play. So that was a difficult thing to deal with on my own with limited options, as I was living in a house with 3 other girls, and I really only had my own, like, private bedroom for him to live in with me. Then the other thing was his weight. We knew he was gaining weight following his neuter, and I didn't have a lot of control over his diet since he was being fed at the school for 5 days of the week, and also lots of people visiting and giving him treats during that time. So I quickly knew that was going to be something I was going to have to deal with. As well as when I actually got him home to Kitchener and was living with my husband, he started showing some stalking behavior. And if you've ever been stalked by a cat, it's pretty scary. So although he was such a sweet cat, he would kind of wait for me to come down the stairs and sit on the banister and jump me. And it wasn't, totally aggressive, but it was not good behavior. So yet again, something we needed to deal with and nip in the bud right away. What were some of the solutions to those things? Well, I was lucky enough to have my own bathroom at school, so I did end up having Hudson stay in the bathroom at night. And he really didn't mind that at all, didn't cry much, and was able to have all of his necessities in there. So that was a good solution while I was up at school still. Then when we got back home, that wasn't an issue at all. So he didn't have to stay housed anywhere in particular at night. In terms of his weight, I quickly got a collar and a harness, and I started treating him a bit more like an adventure cat, if you've ever heard of one of those, where he would walk around indoors at the school, specifically in the animal part of the school, and that was something he quite liked, gave him a little bit of extra exercise, and the other dogs and that didn't seem to mind him too much, and he was quite social and confident, so he didn't spook easily at all. It also allowed me to have him outdoors more as the weather allowed up there. And then another thing that we found helpful was that I could put notes on his cage card so that other students would know to reduce his calories and not be giving him extra treats. And that helped a little bit, but I know most of the weight came off when he was at home with me and I was able to really control his calories. In terms of Hudson's stalking behavior, I did use a water bottle and I would spray him anytime he jumped at me. And that's an operant conditioning tool called positive punishment, where you're basically adding something. That's the positive part. You're adding something in order to discourage a behavior or deter something. So the water being sprayed at him was added in order to deter him from jumping on me. And that helped me feel better when I was coming down the stairs, as well as we knew that he needed an energy outlet. So we got him some more toys, made sure to have more organized playtime, and even things like encouraging hunting and foraging behaviors with cats. can be helpful in reducing those kind of negative energy outlets that can arise. So that was a non-issue. Once we did those two things, we never saw the stalking behavior again. Those are the main struggles with Hudson. Then I did get home from tech school. I'd been home for maybe just under a year and was anxious to get a dog. I wanted to adopt a dog even before I left school, but TJ helped me think better of it and just get situated at home before diving into something else. So I got Geller in 2013. I had been not searching long, honestly, and I think I even started searching before TJ was really quite ready for a dog. But then when I came across this dog that seemed easygoing and was large breed and was, good with cats and seemed just laid back, that I thought he'd be good with kids, he ticked all those boxes. So I told my husband about him, and once he saw the picture, it was this just adorable picture and these sad puppy eyes on him, even though he's 1.5. And I was able to convince TJ for me to put in an application at least and see where things go. I said, who knows? We might not even be an approved application, and then no biggie. I had found his profile on Pet Finder, but Geller was actually from Chatham, Kent Animal Rescue, and we were quickly approved. The rescue reached out to us and talked about setting up a meet and greet, and they were actually able to have a volunteer come to Kitchener-Waterloo because they just happened to be in that area or they lived here or something. And so that worked out great for them. So they actually brought the dog to us, to our home. And that was when we did the house tour as well. And it all went really swimmingly. Geller, we could tell, was pretty submissive. Because he would just flop over, roll on his back, and was just really easygoing. He and Hudson even went nose to nose during that house visit, and it was no big deal. So yeah, only positive things about Geller during our meet and greet. And they were happy with the house tour, so we were able to adopt him right then and there, and let him join our home at that moment, and the rescue left him with us. So that doesn't happen so often these days. Almost never. Usually there'll be some grace period between when you meet the dog and when you actually get to take them home. But, how many years ago that was an option. So we were super excited to have him, and there really weren't a lot of struggles with him. I would say, looking back, that he's pretty much as smooth as an adoption process goes. There was really no tension with the application or with the rescue interview or foster discussion over the phone or the house tour. It all went very smoothly. The main thing we did notice, though, was that he was very submissive. So as we saw this in his meet and greet, he continued to have some submissive urination. So when he would be nervous or excited, especially with greeting people or new people coming into the home, he would pee a little. And so that was something I had a lot of experience with owners and their young dogs having submissive urination at work. So I thought, okay, we got to nip this in the bud so it doesn't become a learned behavior. And also we need to increase his confidence, because it wasn't just submissive urination, it was him throwing himself on his back whenever you would try to do anything to him. And that's not a preferred state for him to be in when I'm trying to trim his nails or brush him or brush his teeth, right? I don't want him to be uncomfortable and scared. I want him to be confident and relaxed when I'm, manipulating him or handling him. That quickly became something we needed to deal with. The solution we found for that was really confidence building exercises. So one thing you can do with pets is just not pet them on top of the head whenever you greet them. Letting him come greet us after he had settled or he was calm or we were calm. So that meant, when you're seated on the couch, instead of greeting him right when you came in the door, you just ignore him and let him come to you once he'd settled, or have him stay in his bed and then you invite him to you when he's settled, so that he knows he needs to greet people in a confident, calm state. And petting him under the neck and on the throat and the chest, that was much preferred, where petting him on the head is seen as more of a dominant greeting rather than on the chest or the neck. Then we also increased his bathroom breaks to make sure that we would compensate and make sure he always had a very empty bladder, so he would be less likely to have any submissive urination. And controlled those greetings with strangers or new people in the home to reduce that, as well as, giving him more boundaries. Dogs feel safe and secure when you provide them with routine and boundaries. So when you're always giving them instructions, they don't have to make up the rules. So making sure that he knew when he needed to be in his bed when people came in, or releasing him off of his bed when he could come. And, giving him that schedule where, we go out for bathroom breaks at this time of the day, we go on a walk at this time of day, you get your food at this. Just predictability made him feel safe and secure and helped him become a more confident dog. So that did not take long at all. He really learned quickly because we were so consistent, and that was just the trick to have him be more confident and comfortable, so that the submissive urination went away. Then we had Geller for about 3 years. And again, he was about 1.5 years when we adopted him, before I got the itch to get another dog. And this time, because things went so great with Geller, I thought I could use a bit of a challenge. So we were specifically looking for a bit of a companion for Geller, because we knew that kids were in our future. So it might be nice to set him up with a companion so that he's not as shocked when some of our attention goes away because it's been redistributed to our children. So we were basically preparing for having kids, and that was one of the ways in which we did that. I will say that not everyone needs to do that. Of course, when you have more pets, your attention is divided anyways. So, that's really, really up to you. But with Geller specifically, we just thought he would enjoy the company of another dog. And that's where our search for Rory came in. So what was I looking for? A playful dog. Not that Geller he wasn't necessarily a playful dog, but we thought that might be a good juxtaposition to him, that it wasn't, we don't need 2 lazy dogs. Maybe a playful dog would kind of bring out Geller's happy side. And we wanted another large dog, one that was, again, good with cats and hopefully kids, as well as a training challenge. I did welcome some work so that I could learn more about animal behavior and training. And I was excited to, help give an animal a second chance, especially one that might have had, some issues that needed to be sorted out. I started searching on Pet Finder once my husband said, okay, we can start looking. And I quickly found a dog that was actually at the Guelph Humane Society, and it was a Dalmatian. His name was Stanley. I still remember him to this day. He really was a sweet dog. He had a food allergy, but he had tons of applications in for him. So we did not succeed with Stanley. We met him, would have loved to take him home, but lots of other people beat us to him. We were behind the ball on that one. But then I kind of had that idea of getting a Dalmatian in my head, and I thought, well, maybe someday that will work out for us. I even had looked into specific Dalmatian rescues, but had, not seen anything come up. Well, then, sure enough, we weren't really looking that much longer before I saw Rory's profile come up on Pet Finder, and it had like literally just been posted. And I looked at her profile. It looked like pretty well all good things. It did talk about being good with cats and kids and dogs, and that she was young. She was about 8 months old, so very moldable, right? The younger they are, the less likely some of their bad behaviors have really been learned. So I consulted with my husband. I knew time was of the essence, and we applied that same night that we saw that profile. And she was at the Pet and Wildlife Rescue in Chatham, Kent area. And again, I don't live in Chatham, Kent. That's like 2 to 3 hours away from me, but I have no qualms about driving to do a meet and greet for a dog that could possibly be with me for years. It's just such a small thing we could do to increase the likelihood we'll find a compatible dog. So I was certainly willing to drive or search wide and far as much as needed to find the right fit. So it didn't take long for me to hear back about Rory's application. I was the first application, and later found out that I was like the first of 30. So that was pretty lucky. And they loved my application, so they weren't really considering anyone else until they had seen my process through. So that was nice. Whereas nowadays, again, you see there will be a lot of applications that are liked, and they look at multiple applications at the same time. So there might be multiple rescue interviews happening, might be multiple house tours happening. You don't often even know how many they're looking at once. But we were able to set up a time to go meet her in Chatham area. So we drove that 2.5 hour drive with our dog Geller and met her there. And this was a very different scenario than Geller's. So we arrived, we walked to the backyard, and Rory, it was with her foster parent, and immediately barking at us, very defensive, not interested in coming near us at all. As we kind of took our time to have her come to us, she would not move away from her foster. And to give you reference, she had only been with her foster for like 2 days before we met her. And that was quite concerning. I think we both, TJ and I both thought, okay, we might not be going home with this dog. This might not be a done deal. After hanging out there for a little bit, I asked the foster if we could take Rory for a walk. And they said, oh, sure. So we took her for a walk, and I didn't know how that would go, but it actually was just the right thing. Getting her away from her foster owner allowed her to trust us and see us as kind of her leaders as we were holding the leash now. And she really was super comfortable with us, so much so that she let us stop on our walk and pet her from head to toe and kind of manipulate her paws and her mouth. And I really gave her the whole check over as an RVT would, like I did a bit of a physical exam on her. And all looked really well, except for she did have like a bacterial skin issue, but that could be solved. And that response was completely shocking. I didn't expect her to let us do that, but that told me that she had so much potential and that we really had to see this dog through. So then it was up for us to have the dogs meet. And I can't say I remember a lot about this. I just don't remember it being much of an event. There was no negative interaction between the two dogs. They weren't like immediately playing or anything, but that was because Geller's not a very playful dog, and I think they just gave each other space, but they cohabitated nicely, and we thought, okay, this seems pretty manageable. And my husband, I know, was certainly concerned about the idea of adopting her after how she greeted us, but I said to him, she has so much potential, and I'm so willing and ready to work on her and make her a great member of our family. And he said, okay, I trust you. Let's do this. So we did take her home that same day. And even on the car ride home, there was a point where she jumped the seat because we kept Geller and her in separate parts of the SUV. And she jumped the one seat and joined him. And I thought, well, that's not fair to Geller. So we tried to sort them out so that they would be separate. But clearly she didn't want to be in the back. She wanted Geller to be in the back. She wanted to be in the center. So we had to switch them. And in doing so, Rory wouldn't even let TJ pick her up. She was quite difficult for that, flailing about, and he was like, I can't even pick up my own dog. This is stressful. Like, how is this even going to work? Already regretting the decision we made. And I'm there, like, trying to hold it together, be confident, because of course I'm not. I'm going, oh man, this is going to be a big undertaking, but I knew I was ready and willing for the task. It's just, I had to put on a brave face for him so that he wouldn't be so concerned about the huge decision we had just made. So after we got her home, the struggles just started flying at us. We had to integrate her with our cat Hudson, and although they had said she was good with cats, that she was primarily caged during her life. So Rory's backstory that was shared to us was that she was surrendered by a family who was trying to go into a safe home because their father was abusive and could have been abusive to the animals too. So she stayed in the crate a lot because that was safest for her. But, as an 8-month-old dog, you can imagine that's not such great exposure to the other animals in the house or the kids. So yeah, she was crated a long time and unfortunately didn't get along very well with our cat. So she wanted to chase Hudson almost immediately. That was scary and something that was certainly challenging for us. Then the other huge thing was stranger danger, which we kind of knew a little bit about based on my foster conversation on the phone with Rory's foster mom. She had just kind of shared that, she barks at the door and that she needs some time to warm up to people, but she does warm up. And clearly we saw that when we met her. So yeah, she's very, very much nervous of new people as they enter your home or new people greeting them on leash. So that was another big thing we needed to start working on building her trust with other people. And then walking nicely on leash. That walk we took with her on the meet and greet was bonkers. The best part was when we stopped and she let us touch her from head to toe because she was pulling at the end of her leash left and right, super distractible. A leaf would fly by and she'd go jumping up and down or like run to the other side of you. So she needed a lot of leash work as well. So some of the solutions that we found, which took us varying lengths of time to manage, initially we worked with integrating her with our cat Hudson. I honestly can't remember whether it was 1 month or 3 months, but one of those landmarks of time that it took for her and Hudson to be able to cohabitate in the house without supervision or restrictions. So we really had just supervised visits with them, with Rory on leash and Hudson able to just move around as he liked. And we started with very short periods of them visiting and tried to keep it positive. But if there was a moment where Rory kind of lunged or, leaped toward Hudson, the visit would end and they would be separated again. And we used our basement at the time to keep Hudson safe from Rory during the rest of the day while we were at work or out. And that worked just fine. We just made sure we gave him extra attention and time with us in the basement as we didn't always frequent the basement as much. So yeah, that 1 to 3 months felt like forever. And it was a huge deal that she didn't get along with Hudson because we absolutely adored him and we didn't want him to get any less attention or not be able to move around the house freely. But when obviously you have a dog chasing you, that's not an option. So We made sure we didn't let the chasing happen at all. That was not okay. And Rory did come around to him. And I think a lot of that really had to do with how confident a cat Hudson was, that he really, in the end, knew how to set some boundaries with her and, eventually let it be known that he was the boss. After we were done fearing for Hudson's safety, and that was much less stressful situation, and they even started cuddling at that point. They were good buddies. Then we were having to figure out how exactly we would advocate for Rory. So the stranger danger aspect, a lot of that did come down to making sure people knew how they needed to behave around her in order for her to warm up to them. So for Rory, it was a lot about the fact that she couldn't meet people on leash. She did occasionally lunge at people who would try to go pet her on leash. Usually those people were kind of spooking her or coming up out of nowhere. But I still just said, okay, she doesn't need to meet people on leash. She's quite fearful when she doesn't have the ability to run away, because when you're on a leash, right, you can't flight, so you just fight. And that was her response. When she wasn't like that in the house, she wouldn't fight. She would try to run away. I could tell that was the real limiting factor there, being on a leash. So she didn't get to greet people on leash. I always made sure people knew, don't touch her. I even made her a little vest that said, ask before petting, because people just love to pet a dalmatian. So that was a good thing for us to have for when we're in public spaces. And it was harder for me to always tell people before they might go out of their way to pet her. And in the home, we managed things so that when people would walk into the house, they knew to not greet her, and Rory would be in her bed, so she couldn't greet people at that time, and she had to be calm before she could go up to people. And it was up to them to, let her sniff her hand or not, but they needed to be seated or down on their knees, because standing from above and reaching over her was very fearful for her. And we don't know if some of that has to do with being hit as a young dog, but she certainly had a harder time with males, and with those big arm movements seemed to scare her. So she warmed up to people once they greeted her like that, no problem, especially indoors. So after that, we had been trying all along to deal with her leash skills, because she was just pulling at the end of the leash all the time. It didn't matter how long you walked for. She was not attentive to you the moment you were outside with her on a leash. And so we had tried a few different methods just to literally control her, because she was a really strong dog, and I was easily pulled around by her at that time. So we tried some harnesses and some special collars and that sort of thing. And we had gotten to a better place, but still not the level of control that I wanted. And so at that time, we were just like, we made so much progress with Rory, but I know that she has so much potential still to meet. And I don't want to give up on her, but we were quite frustrated by some of her continued behaviors. So barking was one of them. She's a very alert dog, we found out, and she would alert us to noises outside all the time. And we thought we need her to be in a calmer state on a regular basis. So let's look at getting a trainer in to help us make further progress than what we've already done. And that was a fantastic thing. I highly recommend that for anyone who goes, okay, we've made so much progress on our own, but we're just kind of like plateauing here. We're not getting any further. Your dog has just limitless possibilities as to what they can learn. So it's totally worthwhile to look at getting a trainer in. And so we specifically went with BarkBusters. Well, I wouldn't say that I outright recommend BarkBusters going forward as a trainer in particular. I at the time knew that we needed a different method because she wasn't very attentive with us when we were using the positive reinforcement. So the training with treats and that was actually more distracting for her sometimes because she would get so fixated on the treats that she was not so much paying attention to what she was learning. And so that's where I knew we needed different modalities, and that Barkbusters was doing stuff like that. But I would say that in general, I recommend positive reinforcement training, and some of their modalities like adding positive punishment. So when you add something to discourage a dog from doing something, that's called positive punishment. And I try to stay away from that when possible, but occasionally it's needed. So anyways, Barkbusters helped us with her leash walking and her barking behavior, and it certainly improved, and we learned of new ways to deal with her less desirable behaviors. One of Barkbusters' tips was to walk with her very slowly. So to have her have to pay attention to every step you take because you're walking slowly, and then you kind of would increase your pace as you went. And that worked a little bit, but was hard for us when, again, we're trying to exercise her through her walk, and that means that you needed to give her a very long walk. And I could only handle, a dog that was pulling so much in my hands and, the winter, all that stuff. So that wasn't like the end all be all method for us. We did try some other training techniques, and I think it was really helpful when we did the stop and start method, as well as changing directions method. Those things really seemed to get her paying more attention to walking in line with us and being more obedient on her walk. Some other basic obedience training also helped. Like we did some clicker training to regain her focus with distractions, and that was also a very helpful solution for her terrible leash manners. Are you embarrassed by your dog's behavior on leash? Is your rescue dog impossible to control on walks? Do you fear for your safety when you're walking your dog? I too had a wild and unruly dog on leash. So let me spare you the same arduous journey with the tools, aids, and techniques I use to walk my dog with confidence. Get my free mini course today over at my website under Helpful Tools, or find the link in today's show notes. All in all, the search was not the difficult part for any of my pets. I had no problem locating dogs I was interested in, and I really enjoyed searching the web to find them. That was a nice challenge for myself to find dogs that I thought were really compatible with us. And I was also pretty resourceful, being willing to drive wherever I needed to in order to meet a pet. So I had lots of options in that regard. But then again, I also had a really open mind when it came to what I was searching for. I did, of course, have a few things that I absolutely needed, like, good with cat, good with dog, good with kids, but I was pretty flexible with, the breed and a few other things. So the biggest challenge really was integration, especially when we got Rory. She was so difficult with integrating her with our cat Hudson, but then also integrating her in our lives, and just having so many behaviors arise following adopting her that I did so much research in those first few years with Rory, just always trying to learn how to manage her newest behavior, or trying to make her a more well-mannered part of our family. And I to this day, I haven't stopped working on her, and dog ownership is a journey. It's not a destination. So you'll always have dogs where some are really easygoing and others kind of require that regular maintenance, and that's Rory for us. And certainly I knew that, and I took that on. All those red flags were there when I met her at that meet and greet. So don't be alarmed. Don't be worried that you're going to get stuck with a dog with so much work to be done, because I chose that. Don't forget I chose that. But Rory is the reason why I'm talking to you today. There would be no Pawdoption guide without her. We struggled so much with her integration that she really had me seek out so many solutions, and I've learned a lot. Although we struggled, it has made me a better dog owner in so many ways. And that is what has given me this wealth of knowledge to share with you all. So, thank you, Rory. I hope today's episode was relatable for you wherever you are in your adoption journey, and that you'll tune into the next one. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to give it a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I'd really appreciate it. And if you'd love to tell me what you thought about this episode, then head on over to my Instagram, where I'm most active, or even my Facebook page at Pawdoption Guide. Thanks for joining me today. I can't wait to be here with you again next week.